Alright, so this is my third time recording this video and I'm praying it goes well. What is up YouTube? My name is Trinity and welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. So today we are going to be talking about a topic that I have been wanting to cover since really the beginning of my channel, but because it is, again, a topic that really excites me, I wanted to wait until I was further into doing YouTube, so I felt like I could do the topic justice. So the cryptid that we are actually going to be talking about today is very famous. It is an Algonquin legend, the Algonquin being an indigenous group and Algonquin speaking peoples as a whole. You probably have heard of this legend actually. It has become very popular in recent years in a lot of media. Not so recently, it was in Stephen King's Pet Sematary. I recently watched a movie on Hulu called Antlers that starred this creature as well. And probably most famously in the last couple of years is the video game Until Dawn, which also features these creatures. Yes, I am talking about the Wendigo. So to get a question that I feel like some people may ask, yes, I am indigenous, but the Wendigo is not part of my tribe-specific stories. It's not something that we specifically believe in. And also, the word Wendigo is not the actual name of the creature. It is kind of a misinterpretation of what that word is. I don't know personally what it is, but so I feel more comfortable talking about it, even though I do acknowledge it's a very taboo subject. So again, I'm going to try to cover it very respectfully as I would any indigenous legend. So the legend of the Wendigo originated with the Algonquin people. So the actual Algonquin nation, as well as surrounding nations that derived from the Algonquin language. These being nations from the Great Plains and Great Lakes areas of the US and Canada. So the word Wendigo itself, or at least the word that it comes from, translates to the spirit that devours mankind. And it's often associated with things such as winter, cold, ice, as well as famine and starvation. Which, as we get further in the video and I kind of go into what I personally think about how this creature or the legend of it could have originated, I'll go more into why that makes more sense. So there are mainly two different ways Wendigos are portrayed in media. Probably the more famous one is like a deer head or deer skull for the head, but that is not accurate. So Until Dawn probably got the creature the most accurate. They are very skinny, they are large, they move very creepily. They always look like they're on the verge of starvation. They kind of look like decaying bodies, but very emaciated. And one detail that I enjoy that they added to the game is that the Wendigos didn't have lips. Now this seems like a very small detail. However, because the Wendigo is supposed to be insatiable, it's kind of supposed to imply that it was so hungry and greedy that it ate its own lips because it was so close to its mouth. So the Wendigo is physically described as follows. Gaunt to the point of emaciation, its desiccated skin pulled tautly over its bones, with its bones pushing out against its skin, its complexion the ash gray of death, and its eyes pushed back deep into their sockets. The Wendigo looked like a gaunt skeleton recently disinterred from the grave. What lips it had were tattered and bloody. Its body was unclean and suffering from suppurations of the flesh, giving off a strange and eerie odor of decay and decomposition, of death and corruption. The Algonquin themselves describe the creature as a giant with a heart of ice. Sometimes it is thought to be entirely made of ice. Its body is skeletal and deformed with missing lips and toes. Obviously, the missing toes part kind of alluding to frostbite. Again, you envision the cold, you envision a very bitter winter. And this is a description that the Ojibwe give about the creature. Again, very similar to what the Algonquin and others say. It was a large creature, as tall as a tree, with a lipless mouth and jagged teeth. Its breath was a strange hiss, its footprints full of blood. And it ate any man, woman, or child who ventured into its territory, and those were the lucky ones. Sometimes the Wendigo chose to possess a person instead, and then the luckless individual became a Wendigo himself, hunting down those he had once loved and feasting upon their flesh. I know some nations believe that when a Wendigo actually catches a human and consumes it, it grows proportionately to the human that it consumed. So in a way, it never really ate anything, if that makes any sense. So no matter how much it eats, it's going to keep growing and it's always going to be on the verge of starvation. So it sounds like a horrible existence. Now, there are a couple of ways that legend says somebody may become a Wendigo. So the Wendigo is the spirit that possesses someone when they undertake one of these actions that draw it in, and then they themselves become the physical manifestation of the Wendigo. So probably the most famous is cannibalism. If you undergo cannibalism, then the spirit of the Wendigo possesses you and you become this creature. This is not the only way, however. Wendigos aren't only related to cannibalism and starvation, they are also related to gluttony and greed. So just living a gluttonous lifestyle or being especially greedy, you might become a Wendigo, as well as coming into contact with one. So this is kind of where my analysis on where I think the Wendigo legend came from and its purpose in indigenous communities comes from. So in the Great Lakes area and the Plains area, if you don't know, like, winters are extremely harsh. So I think that's where part of the legend occurs. In the winter, especially if maybe it was a bad harvest year or it's just especially bad and food is running out, somebody may be tempted to resort to cannibalism. And I'm definitely not saying it's a good thing, but we don't know what we would do in a survival situation. Our minds are certainly not in the right place. So maybe the Wendigo was, in part, created as a mechanism to deter this kind of behavior within a community. And because the Wendigo is also associated with greed and gluttony, when you live in a community that every winter you face an entire community collapsing if you don't all work together, that could also be another one. But it goes even farther than that. So Wendigos are said to be very strong and very fast creatures, but one of the most terrifying things that they apparently use to hunt humans is their ability to mimic voices. So imagine one day maybe you're walking out in the woods and suddenly from nowhere you hear your parents or a sibling or a child or like your partner or someone screaming in pain and danger, calling for help. You're probably not going to think twice about it. It preys on that sort of, kind of like how we talked about how the black-eyed children, how whatever they are taking the form of a child kind of plays on our instincts to protect children. The Wendigo is kind of doing the same thing. It's preying on a soft spot we have, which is extremely sinister. Though it might not even be someone you know. I've also heard that Wendigos can only mimic the last words of their previous victim, which in most cases is probably going to be screaming for help. And even if you're not going to go running off into the woods to go find a stranger calling for help, that hesitation, do you go for help? Do you go? Maybe that's all the Wendigo would need to get you. So I'm still trying to collect legends and superstitions from the Appalachian Mountain area just because, again, I know I mentioned it before. I want to do a video on it because I've always heard stuff about the area and I've seen movies playing on legends about the area, but I have never like gone deep into it about what it's all about. And the Appalachian Mountains actually run through at least part of the area that Wendigos are supposed to inhabit. So I was thinking, with the ability to mimic voices, is it related to a phenomenon I heard about where if you're walking in the Appalachian Mountains and you hear your name, you're supposed to say, no, you didn't, and keep walking. Completely ignore it. I've heard some people say that if you hear your name when you're walking in the Appalachian Mountains, that it is the devil trying to tempt you. But maybe the overlap in area, maybe it's a Wendigo. I don't know. So a lot of the information I gathered for this video I got from websites that at least quoted indigenous people because I want this to be as authentic as possible. I know the further away from you get from the source, the less credible the information becomes. Not saying credible as in I believe the Wendigo is real, but credible at least in what is actually said about the creature. But I also went on Reddit just out of curiosity because I know there is a Wendigo subreddit. When I was reading about somebody who apparently had a sighting, I went to the comments and I had a little deja vu because in the comments somebody said, no, that wasn't a Wendigo, that was a crawler. And thankfully the comment was explained when somebody asked what the fuck is a crawler, but I just kind of had a flashback to my Palmyra Wolves video where somebody said, oh no, that's definitely a dog man, and then never responded to what a dog man was. Let me know, do you want me to start looking into what crawlers are? They sound like they could also be an Appalachian mountain legend or something. Aren't those what the things from The Descent are called? I fucking love that movie. It is chef's kiss, probably the best horror movie I've ever seen. Let me know if you want a video all about crawlers. I would love to start looking into that, and I'm curious if the crawlers they're talking about are the same ones from that movie. Now, something that I've noticed about media nowadays that portrays Wendigos is that it kind of strips the cultural context away from the creature, so it's just like any other movie creature. They don't really have a lot of background on what indigenous people who actually believe in the Wendigo say about it. If there is a native person involved, it's kind of just like them going to this person and them saying, oh yeah, that's definitely a Wendigo, that thing you keep seeing. Or like somebody going online and doing their own research and finding out like, oh yeah, it's from this native legend. And I feel like that kind of strips away the uniqueness of the creature, of any legend that you use really. If you only use like the most literal form of it rather than what it says about the culture that it arrived from, I feel like it takes away a lot of what makes that creature unique and interesting. Like an indigenous culture. A lot of cultures that have been influenced, say, by Christianity or religions like that, they kind of see good and evil as a binary, and people are on the good side, but they'll be tempted over to the bad side. Where a lot of indigenous cultures, it's you are smack dab in the middle, and it's your choices that determine who and what you will become. So it's not quite being tempted, it is your choices decide if you become a monster or not. So I feel like that's more impactful than just, you know, somebody suddenly being stalked by a monster out of nowhere. It makes it scarier, like anyone can be the monster, including you. So something that probably a lot of people know about, or have at least heard of if they know about the Wendigo is Wendigo psychosis. So Wendigo psychosis is a culturally specific that afflicts native peoples that believe in the Wendigo. It will make them crave human flesh or think that they are being hunted or stalked by Wendigo, or that they themselves are becoming a Wendigo. And again, a lot of that comes from, especially if you're in an isolated community, and I feel like that's maybe weird coming from the outside if you live in like a town or a city, but if you live in an isolated place where like food can be scarce, or weather conditions, or really the same conditions that may have affected ancestors to modern day Algonquin people. I feel like if you don't live in a city or a town where food is at your fingertips, you can either order it or you can just drive there. Or if you live in a place where like you are still very affected by the elements and it still poses a threat to your life and death. I don't want to say start going crazy, but kind of like, if it's a life or death situation, or at least what you perceive to be a life or death situation, I can definitely imagine somebody like becoming very afraid that they're becoming this thing because they're having these thoughts in their head, like because they're desperate or they're hopeless. These feelings of desperation, are you going to live or die? Are you going to starve? Is your family going to starve? Those things kind of mimic the conditions that previous natives were in back pre-colonization, when winter hit, when the harvest wasn't good enough, or maybe when someone in the community was being greedy and it took food or resources from other people in the community. So the Wendigo legend, as well as Wendigo psychosis being an internalization of that legend, is a way to deter that kind of behavior, because if you live in a community like that, you need to rely on each other, and you need to trust each other, and you need to help each other in order to survive. It's a very important story to tell. Indigenous people are extremely good storytellers, and their stories are multi-layered. They have a lot of different meanings, and they're supposed to tell simple things to complex things, depending on who's telling the story, what variation of the story is being told, and who's hearing the story. But I feel like even a story that seems as simple as the Wendigo is very important even today, even if we're not all on the brink of starvation every winter or something. Even if we're not talking about cannibalism and starvation, even though starvation is a very real threat to some people today, even in very developed societies, greed and gluttony, taking more than you need, a very small group of people being extremely greedy so the rest of us don't have as much as we need to survive and thrive. It's still as applicable today as it was hundreds of years ago. And that's something I specifically enjoy about the legends and the stories that Indigenous people tell. They are timeless. Sorry if I got a little ranty at the end. I do enjoy thinking about this and talking about this, and I probably only scratched the surface because, again, I wanted to keep it more towards the legend and stuff because I know that's what people are more interested in. Now, do I think the Wendigo is real? I don't. I feel like it was probably created as a teaching lesson, but I feel like that's a lot of what I think. So I don't know. There have been things recently that have made me start to think there's probably more to the world than I'm willing to admit to myself at the moment, because I haven't specifically encountered these things. But my mind's starting to be opened a little. Not in like the conspiracy theorist kind of way, but I'm more open to stuff. So, do I think the Wendigo's real? No. But I am going to smudge after this video just to be safe. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me down below what do you want me to talk about next. And leave down below or on my previous community post, what is your favorite dinosaur? I know that's not what this video is about, but I promise it will be relevant in an upcoming video that I'm very excited to finish writing the script for and get recorded. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. I know it's been a minute. I've had a lot going on, but I'm so happy to be back, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye.